are you?
My name's Bond. James Bond.
Bond. James Bond. Bond, what do you think you're doing?
Keeping the British end up, sir.
Welcome to James Bond Radio. News, reviews, and discussion of all things 007.
Pussy.
As you can see, I have no problem with female authority.
Oh, pipe down, 007.
Do you expect me to talk?
No, Mr. Bond, I expect you to die.
Okay, welcome to episode 5 of James Bond Radio. I'm Tom Sears and I've got my good buddy Chris Wright. Say hello, Chris.
Hello, Chris.
Yeah! We're feeling good this week. I don't know whether anybody noticed, but in last week's episode, I was a little bit under the weather. I had the sniffles, I had the flu, and I wasn't feeling good, but I powered through anyway. But today I'm back and fighting fit. How are you doing this week, Chris, anyway?
I think you might have passed on the flu last week because I was feeling a little bit under as well. But now, fighting fit, raring to go. You're sounding a lot better. You're sounding healthy today. I like
Thanks,
it.
Thanks, man. We just got to stop kissing, you and I, and passing our things back.
Well, that's what it is.
Terms.
That's what it is. Yeah.
There we go. Cool. Well, so we know the news this week is that Bond 24 is going to start filming in October. How do you feel about that?
Well, I'm going to find out where, and I'm going to sneak along, and I'm going to join in, and I'm going to make sure I get a cameo in the background.
Well, you know, that's what I tried with Skyfall. Do you remember?
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah, it was close.
Yeah, I was going up to visit my good lady in London, and well, I would say I happened across the set. I knew exactly where they were filming on that set on that day, and I made sure I was there. And they were filming next to Vauxhall Bridge, which is where the MI6 headquarters is. And I came out of the tube, and there was this little sign in the middle of the street saying "filming in progress," blah 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 blah. And I walked along, and I witnessed the scene where Tanner and M are driving along the bank of the Thames on the way to MI6 just before it blows up. So I lingered, and I tried to make sure I was in the back of the shot. It didn't happen, obviously, but yeah, I tried my best. It was good. I didn't see Daniel though; he wasn't there on that day. He was obviously doing something else, unfortunately. But I got to see M and Tanner, so that was good.
That's good. Well, yeah, maybe we should arrange to find out where it is, and we'll both go down together. And
dude, I think it's our duty as podcasters now is to like be on set reporters, like unofficially, obviously. Hopefully, we don't get thrown out, but see if we can score an interview with Danny.
Sounds good.
He doesn't like the fans, though, does he, Danny? I don't think he'd be that receptive to it.
No, he might like us, though. If you never know, he could be the number one fan of the podcast. So
that's true. You never know. You might be a listener. That's true. I didn't think about that. All right, it's I think it's trivia time. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, liking the trivia. The trivia.
All right, do you want to go first this time?
Yeah, go for it. I'll go first. Okay, so my one this time. Last time we talked about sort of the 00 agents and everything. This time we're going to talk about Bond aliases. So I'm going to list a number of Bond aliases that he's used, and then you'll and the audience will have to sort of come up with the answers to what film this alias was used in. Okay.
I think I'm going to be good at this one.
I think you will be good at this one. Now there is 9, and there is a bonus question to get 10.
All right. Okay.
So I'll go through them. So we've got James Stock, Mr. Fisher, Robert Sterling, David Somerset, Arlington Beach, Klaus Hergesheimer, James St. John Smythe, Dr. Mikhail Arkoff, and Mr. Van Beek. I've got
all of those.
Well, man, you're good.
And there was a bonus one, did you say?
There is a bonus one, which is... I'll have to tell you the bonus one after we do later on.
I think I know what the bonus one is already. I'm good with my aliases. I'm not good with my 00s, but I'm good with my aliases.
You're on fire today.
Yeah, cool.
So what about you? What have you got?
Okay, my question is as we're talking about From Russia with Love today, is From Russia with Love related? Good. And my question is, how does Bond take his coffee when offered in Kerim Bey's office?
Ooh,
that's quite a tricky one, isn't it?
Yeah, that is a good one.
That's a blink and you'll miss it kind of question. Yeah.
I like the way that a lot of your questions are around food and drink and stuff.
It's what I love about life, man. That's my favourite thing. So, yeah, why not?
Cool. I'll have a good think about that one.
Cool.
Excellent question.
Well, before we press on, I've got to do the old roundup of make sure you come join us on Facebook. We're building up a nice little community over there. So just type in James Bond Radio into the search, or if you want to go to facebook.com/James Bond Radio, come and join us. We're on Twitter, which is @James Bond Radio. And if you go to jamesbondradio.com, you can leave us a voicemail. So if you've got any questions, there's a big button on the front page. If you've got any questions or anything like you'd like to say, just click that and you can leave us a voicemail through your computer, and maybe we'll play it on the show and answer your question there and then. So that'll be pretty fun. I noticed we didn't get any submissions for a Dr. No theme tune yet.
I was really disappointed, you know.
Yeah.
I think what the audience are waiting is for us to come up with our song version of Dr. No, and then they'll say, well, that's just lame, I can do something better, and then they'll start coming in.
I
so
think that's the key.
Yeah, we'll get on it, I reckon. Maybe if it's just a chorus or something, you know, we'll sort something out.
All right, cool. That's the challenge set down. The glove slap on the face. Now, speaking of Facebook, we had a comment come in from one of our listeners, Simon Uskuri, and I felt what he said resonated with me somewhat when I read it, because I felt his pain somewhat. And basically, we were talking about Michael Fassbender making a good Bond and his performance in X-Men First Class. And here is Simon's comment, and I will quote it. Guys, I've been re-listening to episode 2. Re-listening, he's done it twice. That's quite impressive. Yeah. And you know how you were saying how Connery-ish Michael Fassbender is in X-Men First Class? Well, this is a deliberate move by the director, as the stylistic tone for Fassbender's character is Connery/Bond. The whole picture is set in the 60s. The inspiration was 60s Bond, right down to the sets and the costumes. It is the director's love letter and his audition. As he says, he would love to one day direct one. I've been dying to share that with like-minded people, other than my girlfriend, who just politely nods and smiles at me. Lol. Cheers, Simon. Now, when I read that last paragraph, I feel like, because it's almost like Bond fandom is somewhat, it could be almost classed as a disease, I think, sometimes. And I think the good thing about this podcast is that once a week I get to sit down and chat to you about Bond, and it's almost like this little valve in my head is released. It's like, and I can go outside in the town and walk amongst regular human beings and almost feel normal again. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think that's somewhat of a beautiful thing. So that's another reason to join Facebook, because you can come and you can vent all that stuff with us, and we can chat about it and get excited about stuff that the normal humans don't appreciate as much.
It's therapy.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. I feel that's exactly what it is. Yeah. But yeah, good on you, Simon. So come join us on Facebook and join the party.
Right. Well, I had a little thought about something when I was watching Thunderball, which was quite interesting. And I know we were talking in the first podcast about our favourite Bonds, who we liked, and what films for those characters that we liked, and what films we didn't like for those actors. Sorry. And I was thinking, you know, From Russia with Love, obviously we're going to describe that in more detail later, but that's definitely one of my favourites. I think it's brilliant. The script is great. The cast is great. The action is great. I just love everything about it. But a thought occurred to me last night, and I was thinking to myself, if you were only allowed to watch one more Connery Bond, one more Bond, one more Dalton, one Brosnan, one Craig, what would you do? Some of them were easy. Some of them I found it really tricky. And with Sean, okay, I had to think about this long and hard. For me personally, I think From Russia is probably my favourite, with Thunderball really close. Okay. But if I had to choose one Connery, and it was the one Bond that I wasn't allowed to watch any other, I could only watch this one Connery Bond, I think it would have to be Goldfinger. Because I was thinking about it, it's got so much iconic scenes, I don't think I could go through life without ever seeing those again. Like Thunderball, I love. From Russia, I love. But imagine not being able to see Oddjob with the hat, the DB5, the laser scene. You know, just Goldfinger himself is such a good character. And I found it so tricky to choose any other Connery Bond except Goldfinger.
Yeah, that is a big one, dude. Yeah.
Like I was thinking of the rest. Obviously, George is George. More again, like I love Octopussy. Live and Let Die was quite up there, but I think Spy is the iconic film of more, because you got George, you got the Lotus, you got
George?
George with the funny braces. Yeah, you got good old Jaws. Jaws, the Lotus, the cliff jump, the Nobody Does It Better, brilliant film. So that's kind of like the iconic more, I think. So I think if I had to choose one, it would be that one. Dalton for me was quite close, but even though I absolutely hate the end of it, I had to go for License to Kill.
Okay.
Brosnan was easy, GoldenEye. Craig was even easier, Casino Royale.
Yeah.
How about you? What's your feeling on that?
I think it's much the same, actually. I think Oh man, that's a difficult one. I think it's got to be Goldfinger, because there's like that pre-title sequence in Goldfinger is amazing.
Yeah.
I just love that bit. Like, off comes the wetsuit Bond theme, kicks in, and he's running along to plant his bombs. Love that.
Yeah.
And it's just too. Yeah, I couldn't not watch that. Yeah, you're right. I'm getting anxious just thinking about that. I wouldn't be allowed to watch that anymore. So that says it all, I think. Yeah, it would definitely be that one. I would miss Thunderball quite a lot. I would miss that one. And Doctor No. I'd miss them all, actually, apart from probably Diamonds. But yeah, I think I'd have to go with that. More, I think, for me, and I don't know why this is, I can't really put it into words, but I have a special affiliation for Live and Let Die. I don't know why, but I would miss Live and Let Die.
That's
so I think for me, that would be the one I would stick with for more. Maybe just because it's the Wah Wah soundtrack. Wow, and all that stuff. Love it. Tim, I would probably go with Living Daylights, I think, for me. Tim. Yeah, and Brosnan, definitely GoldenEye without a shadow, and Craig, definitely Casino without a shadow. So, yeah, good question, man. Good question.
We can put that out to the viewers as well if they want to put on Facebook or Twitter, tweet what would their films be. Then it'd be interesting to see. Maybe have like a mini vote or whatever and see.
That's a bloody good idea. Yeah, get involved on the Facebook, or even leave us a voicemail on jamesbondradio.com or Twitter or whatever medium you prefer. And we'll see what you think. I reckon Simon's probably going to pipe up, and don't you think?
Yeah, I think he will.
Yeah, he's going to get involved in that for sure.
Yeah.
Cool. All right, then. So shall we crack on with the review of From Russia with Love?
Yeah, let's go for it.
Let's bloody well do it. I suppose, like we did with Dr. No, I guess let's talk about our preconceptions before we watched it, because one of the things I'm doing with this is using it as an opportunity to rediscover everything. So when I watch the movies, I'm like, okay, I'm almost want to watch it with fresh eyes, as if trying to pretend I've never seen it before and look at it fresh. So with From Russia with Love, I've always known it was a good one. And again, it's got that feel of like a proper spy espionage thriller rather than the formulaic sort of thing that Bond would become. But yeah, again, I think for me, my probably my favorite two Connerys would be Goldfinger and Thunderball. So it would be one of the least likely ones that I'd put on again, like Dr. No and From Russia. Probably I wouldn't watch as often as the other two. But yeah, I went in sort of excited to kind of see it again. How about you?
Yeah, well, I've always known it's kind of one of my favourite Connerys. I think early on, back in the day when I was a wee little lad, it probably wasn't as high up as it is. I think it was a bit, it is a bit slower in some respects for the time and everything it was. It didn't have the production value or the big sets or what have you. But I just think as a script, as a story, it's just so clever and it works. There isn't hardly any flaws in that film at all. And if we're going by films with flaws or with the least flaws, I think that's why I rate it so highly. So it was good. It was really good to sort of see it again. And again, I think the cast is probably one of the best things in it. But Connery, again, just shines through so much in this film. He just owns it all the way through. Again, like Dr. No, I know it comes to a point where his performances aren't as strong as they are sort of in the latter films, but From Russia with Love, he's brilliant. So
yeah, I tell you one thing that kind of surprised me again trying to block out that I'd ever seen the film before and watching it with fresh eyes, just how sexually provocative this film is for 1963. Like we'll get to like the details of that as we go through the review, but like there were so many things that I was like, man, that was 1963 and they got away with that. Like that's quite incredible. But yeah, so let's start at the very beginning and let's talk about the pre-title sequence, which really there's a sort of an ongoing thing of Bond dying at the beginning of the film, isn't there? Yeah, you had that in You Only Live Twice. Obviously, you've had it in Skyfall just recently, and again you get it in From Russia with Love. So, how do you feel about the pre-titles?
In relation to the whole series, I think they're one of my favourites. I think the atmosphere that's created, the setting, I love the music for it. The music, John Barry's score from Russia is amazing, but particularly there are one or two brilliant ones, but this is one of them. And you see Grant stalking Bond, and as a first time, you think, well, this guy, he's looking tough, but Bond's going to win ultimately because Bond never loses. And so you got this atmosphere, you got the setting, you got the tension, and then as soon as he sort of pulls out that garrote wire from his watch, you're thinking, well, hang on a minute, this doesn't look like it should normally go. And then obviously he kills him, and imagine watching that for the first time. Obviously we've seen it when we were young, so we know what it's like, but watching that for the first time in the cinema, thinking, what has just happened? Completely flip the audience on like their perception. And then you've got the brilliant line, 1 minute 52 seconds. That's excellent. You know, I mean, how good is that? I loved it. I thought it was fantastic.
I think it's great again how like the sort of the unspoken stuff sets things up so well.
Yeah.
And it's like, really, I mean, Bond using gadgets hadn't happened at this point. Dr. No, he didn't have anything at all.
No.
And then from Russia, obviously, he gets the attaché case and all that kind of stuff. So that's like the beginning of that thing. But just, I mean, that garrote wire coming out of the watch, I mean, that's like a classic Bondian gadget, isn't it? But Bond doesn't have it. And it's from the very beginning, it's setting it up to say, like, this dude's sole mission in life is to kill Bond. He's been training for it. Like you say, that line from who would become General Gogol is like, it just implies so much, doesn't it? It's like, okay, he's been doing this a lot, and this is his sole mission, which is great. And I think one of the funny things about that though is the bit where they remove the mask at the end, and you've just got that massive moustache across the guy's face. It always makes me chuckle, that. But yeah, I think that is an amazing kind of setup for what you, because it's just knocks you for six, doesn't it? It's like, what's going to happen? It's great.
I think there are two things that sort of come along with that sequence which we got to sort of, I guess, praise someone for. The first is, you mentioned about Bond sort of dying at the start and stuff, and it was Harry Saltzman that came up with the idea. Now from like everyone says that Saltzman has like 10 ideas, 8 or 9 of them will be absolutely ludicrous and stupid, but 1 or 2 of them will be amazing and spot on. And his idea was to get Bond to die at the start, and then the audience to think, what the hell is going on, sort of thing. And like you mentioned, he did it with quite a few others. I think you had it in Thunderball as well, You Only Live Twice and what have you. So that's one thing which is great. And the other thing we have to sort of praise is Terence Young, director, and the editor Peter Hunt, because it was their decision to put that sequence before the titles.
That's right. Yeah, they kicked off the whole pre-title tradition. Just from that one decision, because of course we didn't have a pre-title in Doctor No. Yeah.
So imagine if you'd seen the scene and then gone into that. Okay, would it look good? But that's a whole Bond sort of specific thing, isn't it? This pre-title sequence, and it's loved the world over. And kudos for them for putting it before the titles, because how cool is that? I
feel like after revisiting Doctor No as well, there's two of the main players, I think, who were I mean, everybody involved was really, I mean, you can't say that, but two of the main players of setting up Bond as we know him and what he would eventually become is Terence Young and Peter Hunt, because just the way, obviously Peter Hunt went on to direct On Her Majesty's as well, so it's just kind of like all of those key decisions made in like the first 2 movies set up a 50-year-long movie series, which is pretty incredible, isn't it? When you
That's not bad going.
But yeah, I think like that pre-title sequence sets up Red Grant as like the first time that you see a genuine threat to Bond,
and he's scary.
He is
scary. You just know he's tough and he's strong and he's scary.
It's that emotionless thing as well, isn't it? Like you just know. And I mean, in the book you get his backstory as well, that he was like a bit psychotic and would go around murdering chickens and stuff when he was a kid and all that kind of business. So that just kind of adds to it. But yeah, no, that's a great way to kick things off.
And okay, so then we went into the actual title sequence itself. What did you think of that?
Again, it's funny. I didn't know that old Maurice Binder didn't do the titles for From Russia or Goldfinger.
No.
So he came in from Thunderball onwards. Obviously, he designed the gun barrel and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, I think that's great. I think it's I suppose it's like a slightly crude version of what that would become. You've got the belly dancing girls with the titles projected onto their skin and all that kind of stuff. And again, you know, we haven't got the silhouettes quite yet that we had later on. But yeah, it was great. And I think the decision to not have the vocal performance of Matt Monro over the beginning was great as well. I think that was a perfect decision, because you got that. It opens up with the beginning of the 007 theme, doesn't it? I mean, how exciting is that?
It's such a cool arrangement of the theme. I love the From Russia with Love version of it. I think again, you got imagine if you had the Matt Monroe. It's a good song, but you haven't got the energy or the upbeat or the excitement to take you through to the next stage, have you? So that was really good.
That's it. I think it was like we were saying when we looked at the Anthony Newley version of Goldfinger. How we were saying it was still cool, but it just didn't have the excitement of like as soon as Goldfinger starts, you've got bam bam. And it's like, whoa, it wakes you up and it sets you up. And it's the same thing with this. It's like the excitement in that sort of opening couple of bars is pretty incredible. But I loved it.
And I think the guy who did the titles, Robert Brownjohn, like you said, he did like Goldfinger from Russia. Imagine if he had come up with something completely different, because you've got this is the first time that they use girls. If he hadn't come on board, would Maurice Binder have continued using colour motifs or dancing motifs or stuff like that, which were completely unrelated to sort of the sexually posing of the ladies or anything like that? It could have gone completely different. So he's kind of a bit of an unsung hero for me, Brownjohn, because both of the titles in From Russia and Goldfinger are absolute class. They're brilliant, and it helped Binder then get to the next stage of the sort of the whole sort of ladies in the titles idea.
Yeah, well, to be honest, I didn't know about Robert Brownjohn until I'd sort of done some research about this film. I'd always just assumed it was Maurice Binder all the way through. So yeah, I mean, we've got a lot to thank old Brownjohn for. The scantily clad ladies in the title sequence. I mean, that's one of my favourite things.
And I think they had a good bit of fun as well during the editing, because they were. When Peter Hunt was determining who would get the credit on the shaking bum or the shaking cleavage, or and they had a lot of fun doing that, so that was quite good as well. I think, But cool.
Like you say again, like second film in, and we've already got like 2 additional iconic things really taking shape. You've got the pre-title sequence, which happened every time from then on, and you've got the scantily clad ladies dancing around in the intro, which is great,
which is nice.
So, which brings us into the sort of early stages of the film, which is interesting in itself, because there was some editing shenanigans going on here, which we'll talk about in a second. But we've got the chess scene with Kronstein.
Good.
Now, again, this is one of those unspoken things. I always sort of compare it to that scene at the beginning of Star Wars when you see Princess Leia's little ship, and then you have the massive ship attacking it, and just that scene says so much about the situation in that universe. You've got the Empire huge and powerful, and these rebel guys who are really weak, and that's completely unsort of spoken, and it's just done visually. And I think that scene with Kronstein being a chess player in that massive grand room with all that huge audience, and it's just and he comes in and he gets the little thing on the bottom of his glass saying you're required immediately. One move, game's over. Like there, do you know what I mean? That says so much about like how clever this guy is without saying anything really. It's just all the visuals. It's great.
It's exactly. It's like head of operations or head of planning for Spectre, whatever he is. It's just showing you. It's so clever the way that they do it. And I do like the way as well that when he wins, everyone's clapping him, putting a hand out, and he just walks straight past. This man means business. He doesn't care about anyone else. And the little idea with the bit under the water, the sort of cup thing. I loved it. I thought it was great. Really good.
That's so good. They chose that guy to play him. This was his first time he'd ever acted in a film, and he'd done like loads of extra work before, but they chose him because he looked intelligent. Basically, he had that look about him, which is true.
Which is very true.
He looks very sort of crafty and sneaky, doesn't he? You could imagine he'd be good at his job.
I've seen him quite a few times I think he's in quite a few episodes of The Saint with Roger Moore a bit later. So his face is put to good use in that sort of area.
It's funny that you see a lot of Bond people show up in those 60s TV series, don't you? Like in The Saint and all that kind of stuff. I need to rewatch The Saint actually. I've barely seen any of those.
There's a few. I watch them every now and again. They are worth a watch. I think they're good fun.
But so basically the kind of the opening stages of the scene of the movie is just sort of setting up Spectre's plan. I mean, like in the book, like Bond doesn't show up until about halfway through. It's like he just doesn't show up at all for a while. So then you've got the scene on the Spectre yacht with Blofeld. And again, that's kind of setting up the plot and what they're doing. And one of the things I never knew about this, but there's some crazy Peter Hunt shenanigans going on here, right? Which is great. I loved it. And then I was like, immediately I watched that scene again over and over. I was like, man, that's so clever, in the sense that they had to reshoot that scene several times because I forget why. Why did they have to reshoot it?
I'm not sure. I know that they needed certain scenes which they didn't get first time around, but the set had been taken down, so they couldn't.
That was it. Yeah,
They couldn't build the set again because obviously it'd be too expensive. So he came up with a pretty good idea.
Yeah. Well, there's to fill out the scene. It basically begins with Kleb walking towards the fish tank and having a look at the fighting fish in there.
Yeah.
And then something else happens, and then it cuts back, and she's walking away from the fish tank to sit down and have a chat with Ernst. And basically, that's the same bit of footage. They had to use as much footage as they had from the original shoot. So as she's walking towards the fish tank, that's actually her walking away from it, just played in reverse. Yeah. And when you look at it closely, you can just about sort of tell, but you would never know if you weren't looking for it.
Clever.
And the other thing as well is when the shots, close-ups of Kleb talking to Ernst, is her superimposed over herself.
Yeah.
Because it's like they just had to reshoot the scene. And there it was. And it's like, again, you just, I never noticed that in all the years I've been watching this film. And then like I look close, I'm like, you can just sort of just tiny tell, but you would, unless you knew, you would never know, which is incredible.
It's fantastic. I mean, great job, Peter Hunt.
Yeah.
Brilliant. But that scene itself, I think, is, it shows so much. Like you're saying, it sort of sets up Spectre plot. I love the idea of the parallel with the Siamese fighting fish, and waits until the survivor is so weak he cannot battle, and then Spectre, he strikes and stuff. And that was really good. One of the things I really like is the fact that they refer back to Dr. No as well, because it brings in that little link with the previous film and sort of say, as revenge for Dr. No, we're going to take care of Bond. So that's a really nice link. And just again, you see Constantine and his sort of his cleverness and astuteness of the plan, and I think it's great. No, that is great. And again, like for the first, I mean, this is the first time we ever see Blofeld. Like you don't see him in Doctor No, so it's kind of you get the white pussycat and all that kind of stuff, and the ring as well,
and the Spectre ring. Absolutely. So we're starting a lot of tradition is beginning with this film. So the last kind of bit of the opening kind of plot setting is the part of Spectre Island.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, this is a pretty nasty training camp, isn't it? I mean, it's like walking along, bullets flying everywhere. Let's see if you can run faster than this flamethrower kind of thing. Do you know what I mean? It's like, like you would, there's not much room for failure there.
No, only tough people to apply.
Completely. But so like this is when you get you see him at the beginning, but you get your first look at Agent Morsney, which is everybody would know him as General Gogol. And I always wondered whether, for some reason, I thought maybe that was Gogol as a younger man, and he then becomes the head of the KGB later. But I checked in the credits, and he's called Agent Morsney, sadly. Yeah. But good old Gogol. Yeah,
I like the way that scene opens as well. When you just the first time you see Grant, he's at his killing best, takes care of the guy in the pre-titles. And now, next time you see him, he's like getting a massage, like lying down, chilling out. He's got his weights next to him, so you know that he's been doing a workout. Yeah. And it's just showing that if you are a kick-ass killer, Spectre will take care of you. Yeah. They will look after you because obviously that's what they want. And then obviously the chopper flies in, and you get Kleb, who is just like, frightening. I'd be scared of her, just like I wouldn't want to be near her, sort of thing. And then, like you said, Morsney shows her through the training school, which is great scene. Brilliant.
I think again it's one of those things where it's like Grant being like the Russian version of Bond, essentially, isn't he? I mean, that's what he is. It's like you get the nice scantily clad lady giving him a massage, and that's the two things that Bond does most. He kills people and he romances the ladies. So you've got Red Grant doing it. But Grant does not look like he's that into the lady side of things, does he? He's not really that interested.
No,
I think So I think in the book he was asexual or something like.
Was he? Yeah. Okay, yeah. I think his mind's on one thing, and that's not women and it's not money and it's not cars. It is pretty much killing, and that's what he's into. And he does it well. He does it so well. So that's good. And obviously then you got the classic scene with Kleb and the knuckle dusters. He seems fit enough and stuff like that. And you're like, and that, you know, I don't know. It just doesn't look like she pulled. You know, in filming, you're meant to pull your punches. You know, it didn't quite look like she did it. You know, it looked as if she got a full-on hit. I don't know if it was true or not. But
she overall, Kleb looks like a nasty little woman. She's like the sort of school teacher you would have that you would dread.
Yeah,
but 100 times worse than that.
Yeah, I think I did have one quite similar actually. No knuckle dusters.
I had one called Baggy Matthews, and she was very much Rosa Klebish, but yeah, she never actually hit us with knuckle dusters. That would have been too much.
Does she have like spiky shoes or anything like that?
I like to think so. I don't know for sure, but I reckon down there somewhere she had something going on. But yeah, there's actually a shot of the training camp which I thought was genius. Again, good old Peter Hunt cutting things together well. Which is basically as they walk through the camp, they walk past the guy with the flamethrower, and then to show that the camp is bigger, they just do another camera angle of them, and it's sort of implied that they've walked into another section of the camp, but it's actually the same thing again. So if you look closely, after they've done a bit of chit chat and they've walked on into the next bit, there's like a distant shot. It's exactly the same set that they're walking into again. So like you can see the flamethrower guy and all the little stages of the training camp there. And again, that's something I just never noticed after all these years of watching this movie. I only noticed that literally yesterday when I watched it.
Yeah, it's like just all the sort of, you know, back then when they didn't have the bigger budgets and they had to think of ways around it, and then you come up with solutions like that and it works, and you know, great stuff.
Yeah, it's
really
genius. Good. Yeah. So one thing that I always love is like how Bond is like the cocky kind of dude. He's always in control. He always knows what he's doing. But there's one person who he behaves himself around, which is M, obviously, right? And you've got that bit in the office. Throws the hat on again, another iconic thing. Love it, which you can't do these days. Nobody wears a hat, so that whole thing is a relic of a time gone by. Throws it in onto the hat stand, and now for my next miracle. And then he sees M's there, and he's like, and he looks like a schoolboy that's been caught by the teacher. Yeah, and I love that stuff. I think that's brilliant. Like the one man that can put Bond in his place, and there he is.
I love it as well because you know. He would just go straight into the whole flirting with Moneypenny, and he's looking forward to it. You can tell he's like, yes, I'm going to have a little chat with Moneypenny. I'm going to like show her a bit of my charm. We're going to, you know, have a little snuggle or whatever, you know, throws the hat, and then it's like, that's not going to happen this time. Yeah. And I like it. Again, it's like, it's flipping what the audience is going to expect. So throwing in a curveball, sort of thing. Yeah. So, and I like we mentioned in the book, it takes like a third of the book before we see Bond, and I'm really happy in a way that the filmmakers did the same thing. And I don't think we see Bond for like 17 minutes. Obviously, at the pre-titles he's there, but it's the impersonator. But Bond, you know, proper, we don't see for like 17 and a half minutes when obviously we see him with Sylvia Trench and by the punting and they're having a kiss and everything like that. And I'm really glad the filmmakers decided to do that, just because it shows that, well, you see everything that's happening with Spectre before, but it worked, you know? It worked. I think other people might have been frightened to have tried to do that and not show Bond for that length of time.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's funny, isn't it? Because the whole opening sequences of the film were rejigged, weren't they? Like Peter Hunt actually re-edited everything to fit together, and now that's come to my mind. I remember that's why they had to reshoot the Blofeld scene in the yacht, is because they rejigged the scenes and some things didn't make sense, so they had to kind of recut it. So basically what originally happened, basically the opening of the film was the Spectre Island training camp sequence. That was the beginning, and then it went on to recruiting Tanya. And then it went to the chess match, and then it went to the Blofeld meeting on the yacht. But what they realised afterwards was that, well, you've got all of that stuff, and you don't know why they're doing it. You don't know what's going on, and because obviously you don't understand the plot until they're meeting with Blofeld on the yacht. Yeah. So they completely jigged it round. So you open with the chess match, then you get the meeting with Blofeld, and then everything else kind of follows in. So it just makes a lot more sense. So again, Peter Hunt, what a genius! Yeah,
superb. I mean, it would have been totally different, wouldn't it? And he just knew, didn't he? I guess he knew what worked and what didn't in terms of storytelling. So
Yeah, I think that's one of the sort of like a factor in terms of older movies compared to today, in the sense, like you were saying, it was very brave of them not to have Bond show up for so long. And that's the sort of thing, like with how movies are these days, is they're so sort of like cookie cutter, like so safe, and it's like you just don't get that these days. Everyone's going for the sort of the easy option, whereas in those days, I mean, that was a brave move to do that, and it was a great one. But I do love the fact how he's got his champagne tied around his toe in the river. It's just like, you know where his priorities are. He's in the boat, he's got the good looking lady, and he's I've got to have my champagne at the correct temperature, so I'll stick it in the river.
Classy.
And one thing I noticed as well, he's got a car phone.
Yeah, he has. And
I mean, I didn't even know that existed in 1963.
I think that was the very first one, probably.
It must have been, yeah. I don't know whether that was even a thing in 1963, and whether they invented that for the film, or whether that was brand new technology, or what.
It might have been in the book. I'm not entirely sure. Well, actually, I haven't read the book for a little while, so maybe it wasn't. But I'm sure in one of the books he had some sort of car phone. But maybe I'm mistaken. I'm not sure. Have to have a look into it. But
yeah, again, a great sort of entrance scene for Bond. Just lying there with a beautiful woman with his champagne and a nice sunny country park.
And nice Bentley as well. The only time we see him with his Bentley.
That's true. I didn't think about that. Yeah. Good God. Yeah. But yeah. So Bond is back, basically. There he is. Now, like, after you get the M scene, you've got him shooting off to Istanbul. And you sort of notice how parallel that airport arrival is to the one in Dr. No. In the sense, it's almost an identical scene, almost in the way, even the camera angles they've used. He comes in, Bond's walking in, you've got the guy in the background like checking him out, and then he's getting picked up by the driver, this time obviously an ally rather than somebody he's gonna kill. But yeah, it's almost an identical scene.
I think it was obviously done on purpose that way. And like you said, so he's met by a chauffeur. This time the chauffeur's good, not bad. Then there's some mysterious guy watching him. This time he's bad and not good. And then when he goes out the airport, Grant's in the car instead of obviously Quarrel, who was good. Grant's bad and he's good. So I mean, it's just flipping it round again. So it's just clever thinking, I think.
Yeah. So next bit is we meet probably one of Bond's favourite allies, I think. I mean, he's one of those guys, you can't not love Kerim Bey.
No, it's just so charismatic, isn't he? He's like, he lights up the screen, I think. And the chemistry between him and Connery is like pretty much one of the best things in that film, I think.
Yeah,
he's
without a doubt.
Good.
I think he's one of those kinds of people that you just like him instantly, don't you? It's like he shows up and he's got that hospitality thing going on. And
he's funny as well. He's got good humour, he can make a good joke and stuff.
Well, the sad thing is though, the story about the guy who played him, which is just heartbreaking, really. Pedro Armendariz, I think I've pronounced that correctly. But like, basically throughout the filming of the movie, he discovered that he had cancer, like terminal cancer, and basically it was Terence Young's brother, who was a physician, who sent him to him and to check him out and diagnosed him with cancer. And basically, he said, don't recast me, because that was initially what they were going to do. Basically, let me finish the film. I want this to be my last film. So they managed to rejig all of the shooting schedules to get all of his scenes done within 2 or 3 weeks. And there it was. And they were saying progressively through the shoot, he was sort of getting weaker and weaker. And some of the scenes where he was walking, you can see him limping because he's in sort of pain. But they said he was an absolute professional. And even the scenes where he had to like redub some of his audio later on after they'd shot, he came back and did it. And he was there down to the wire, which is really sad. But yeah, and that basically when he flew back to the States, he went to hospital, obviously smuggled a gun in with him and shot himself rather than let the cancer get to the final stages, which is awful.
Which is completely awful. And I'm just glad for kind of his sake and everything that the producers said okay to let him finish it, because what a legacy he's left behind. Obviously the money he got from it helped his family, which obviously that's kind of one of the main reasons he wanted to do it. But being in that much pain, they were saying that not only did he have a limp, but in some of the scenes they were literally holding him up to stand. It was that bad, when it was getting right towards the end. And the fact that he had the professionalism to, even when he'd finished sort of filming, to say, right, I'm happy to hang around to do the ADR, to do the dialogue if needs be.
Yeah.
When he's in that much pain is just, unbelievable.
Yeah, that's an incredible story, isn't it?
And you think of the effect that must have on, because obviously that wasn't at the end of the film. They had to, like you said, they rejigged it. So that was probably halfway through the film, maybe 2/3 of the way through the film. So they still had a good section of the film that they had to finish after he had committed suicide.
Yeah.
So you imagine the effect that has on the cast and the crew. Obviously he was a big bit of that. It's hard to take.
Yeah. That is awful. And all it does for me really is just makes me appreciate his part even more. Just like you see him acting, and you would never know. Like you would never know. It's just he does it so well. Yeah. Good old Pedro. Bless him. Good
old Pedro. Yeah.
Now, I suppose at this point in the film, we're into full on Istanbul territory, which is like a hub of spying throughout history. It's the gateway between Europe and Asia. It's such an important city. Now, I'm going to have to try and control my jealousy here because obviously I know you went there on a trip recently and visited all the From Russia with Love hotspots. So I'm going to let you take the reins on this one while I sit here grudgingly sipping on my water.
Okay. Well, Istanbul, what a city. It is amazing. I went there, it was either last summer or the summer before. And part of the reason was to see my friend who was working out there. But a big part of the reason was also to check out the Bond locations. My holidays are around sort of having fun. And if there's a Bond location in the vicinity, I'll be sure to check it out. And what an opportunity with Istanbul. It's a fantastic city in terms of the way it looks, the exoticness, which I think they got across really well in the film. You've got the scenes like the underground cistern, and that it's got class to it. I think whatever it is, you see Bond and Kerim Bey on the boat, going through the cistern, rats everywhere, and it's just Bondian. Whatever it is, it's a classic scene.
Do you know what it is? That's the one that did it for me. I remember you uploading your photo album from the trip. Yeah. I remember just logging into Facebook one day and just seeing you down there with all the pillars in the water and screaming at my computer, "No way!" And I never dreamed you'd be able to visit that, or even that it would still be there, or even quite what it was. But like it was literally, you walk down the very staircase that Bond and Kerim Bey walk down, get in the boat, and it looks identical.
Yeah, the only difference nowadays is the water level is quite a bit lower, and they've got walkways, so you can walk sort of in between some of the pillars. Oh, okay. Yeah. And the water level is probably a good 5 foot less. So I don't know if you could get a boat on there now, but you can still see everything. And it's strange because it's a small scene, but it's something that suddenly hits you when you're there and you can see it. But there are other scenes where, like, when they go to St. Sophia Mosque, the big, the huge mosque, that was great. I have to admit, like, I was with a few friends. I was like, quick, take a picture of me doing this. Take a picture of me doing that. So I was like hiding behind the pillars, pretending I was seeing like the agent. I was like resting against the pot with my sunglasses and taking it all in. And obviously nowadays it's a lot more populated with tourists than it was back then, but you still get the same atmosphere and everything, and the magic was there. It was great.
That's another location, isn't it? That is identical to how it was in '63. I mean, like there's nothing different about that place. No. Like you say, that huge urn thing, is just there. All the pillars. It's just amazing. And again, I'm like, man, I want to go so bad.
Well, we'll have to go another time. Definitely.
We will.
And then I guess also you've got the Bosphorus, like. Me and my mate did a little trip down the Bosphorus, and the boats are probably a bit more modern than they had back then with Tanya and Bond, but it's the same feeling, and it was just it's great. So I'll be sure for before the release of this podcast, I'll stick up a load of photos so the audience can check them out on Facebook.
Nice, man. That sounds good. So you went somewhere else, didn't you? You went to the scene where Tatiana goes to meet Kleb for the first time.
Yes,
I remember seeing that. Like, you got the angle of that door, fine, like the balcony. She walks around and she goes in the door. Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like the underground cistern, I was amazed but I knew it was there. This other one, it's hidden within the Grand Bazaar, which is massive. You're talking this huge marketplace, and it's not laid out in any logical, way. It is completely all over the place.
Yeah.
And I just didn't know where this place was. And my mates, I had a couple of mates with me who like Bond, but they're not sort of Bond fans as such. And I felt bad because I was like, I just want to check this bit, And I was about to give up. And then, well, I wasn't really, but I would have told them to go off and have fun, and I would have carried on. But anyway, and I saw this little stairway, and I thought, that kind of could be something. And I walked up there, and it splits into two. And I went to the right stairway. I looked across. And I had that camera angle from where I was. And I was literally screaming with excitement. I was like, this is it. And then that got my mates excited. They were like, oh, wow, is it, sort of thing. And that was probably the location that I got most excited about because I didn't know that I'd find it.
Yeah.
And it's only in the film for like 5 seconds, 10 seconds. And I was buzzing.
When I saw the photo of that, I remember thinking, I recognise that, but I don't know where from. Like, you see that it can just be a random street that's been in a Bond. You're like, I know that from somewhere, but I don't. And then when I saw it last night, I was like, man, that's exactly the camera angle Chris had in his photo. Yeah. But it's funny that, isn't it? When you're with non-Bond people, and it goes back to what I was saying earlier about it being some sort of a disease almost. When I was in the Bahamas and found the Ocean Club, I managed to drag my mate along with me, and literally we sort of walked down this little path, and I'm like, is it here? Where is it? Blah, blah, blah. And then we came out onto this little opening, and then there's the roundabout where he gets the DB5 and just goes around in a circle. And I sort of almost had a small seizure. Like, I was so excited. I was just like giggling and fucking, and my mate looked at me and he was like, you're so excited. What's wrong with you? I've never seen you this excited in your whole life. And I'm just like, yeah. That's certainly Bond locations do that for me.
Yeah, we will go on. We'll go on one next year. Definitely,
yeah,
we'll sort it out. Yeah, it's got to be done.
But okay, so I think next bit after that we're talking about the gypsy fight, aren't we? At the gypsy camp.
Yeah, I mean, another great scene of like a big setup. I love it because you've got the sort of it's quite cultural. You've got the belly dancer, which is quite nice, and I like the way that she sort of does a little thing for Bond, and Bond is appreciative of that, and that's good. Then you got the crazy girl fight. It's like something which back then I'd imagine no one had ever seen before. 2 girls fighting on screen.
Yeah.
I mean,
this goes back to what I was saying at the beginning about it being massively sexually suggestive. Like, I mean, that's borderline pornography, isn't it? Like, you get massive cleavage, and you get like their legs up in the air going all over the place as they're scrambling about on the floor. I mean, it's almost like a mud wrestling event, isn't it? Just without the mud, which is crazy. But that whole setting, which they filmed on the back lot of Pinewood, didn't they?
Must have been cold.
Part. Yeah, it must have been too. But that whole thing of like Kerim Bey taking him to see his mates, and they're all sat around in the hospitality of the big gypsy fella. Yeah. Now, the bit after the fight, like, because obviously you get the big battle, all the Bulgars show up and stuff, and you've got that kind of thing where I noticed, and I sort of giggled to myself while I was watching it, in the sense that everybody's in a fight, they're scrapping, shooting, rolling around. Yeah. Bond just seems to sort of just waltz from fight to fight, just doing a little bit of bits and bobs here and there. Like, he'll come over, here's a table, I'll push it over, 2 guys fall over. Here's a tent, I'll just pick up this sword and knock it down, and everybody falls apart. Like, he's just literally strolling around. And that was like, they said that was a conscious decision, in the sense that they wanted Bond to sort of exist above the mess else. Kind of thing, in the sense that he just kind of glides around. But it's interesting, isn't it, how like Grant saves his life. There's this bit where he's about to get killed from behind, and then Grant kills him, and he sort of looks around and he's like, what was that?
I love it. And it's quite similar, in fact, to the way that Bond kills Dent, because he shoots him once and the guy goes on the ground, and then he shoots him again when he's like on his stomach and gets him, and it's sort of mirrored the way that Bond shot Dent. But it's a really, really good scene, and Bond's just like, oh, who the hell did that, Well,
again, it reinforces it, doesn't it, by sort of not saying a lot. It's just like Bond's being played like a puppet at this point. Like, he's not in control at all.
No, not at all. But I do like the way, though, that you said that the way when he goes through, and it's never one-on-one Bond against one of the smaller characters. It's always he'll help out. He does the same in Thunderball in the underwater battle. He'll see a guy in trouble and help him out and get the other guy, and it's good. I think the way that they made Bond sort of do that was very clever, and it worked well, I think.
Well, I think the thing that made me sort of laugh the most at the end of that, like the battle's all kind of over and all the rest of it, and he's like, how am I going to thank you? Well, stop the fight, kind of thing. Yeah. And then there's that bit where Bond's sort of like chilling out in that little kind of caravan thing, and brings the 2 girls into him, and he's like, oh, this is going to take a while, and there it is, and it's like you're talking like threesomes essentially in 1963. And again, like you see him in the next morning, don't you? And they're like sewing up his shirt and stuff for him, like both of them attending. So it's like, again, that's saying everything without saying anything at all. And I'm like, look, Bond, you're the fucking man, dude. And
do you know what I feel sorry for? Well, I don't feel sorry for him, but what about the guy that they were both fighting over? What about him? So
that's
he's like,
point.
he's got two women fighting over him. Suddenly Bond turns up, saves the day. The two women who he thought were fighting over him is suddenly both now with Bond. And he's like, well, hang on a minute.
Do you know what? It's very interesting. I had not considered that part. Yeah. Good God. Yeah.
So poor fella, Bond's just come along, stolen both his women, and now he's like, who knows where he is.
That's just what you've got to expect, man, when Bond is concerned. You know,
that's it. Like you said, he'll you want to be with him, but he'll be nasty enough to steal your girlfriend, you said the other day. So. Absolutely. The other thing I think that's really cool about the scene as well is it's the first time that you hear the 007 theme. You know, it's I think it's only like 5 sort of films, but can you say the beat, because you're kind of good with music? Do you remember the one that's
that like
that's the one, and it works well, and I think works well within that fight. So it's quite interesting the way that Barry sort of came up with that and used it in a few different films. So
that is. It's funny, like we haven't heard that one since Moonraker, but it's funny in the sense that does feel like quite a dated piece of music. I love it, but you'd never get away with using it now for some reason.
No, I don't think so. But then again, I think if we had two women wrestling in a mud bath, we possibly could get away with that. So on 24, who knows?
Yeah, okay, I'm sure Barbara and Mickey G watch this or listen to this show. I'm sure they do. So let's put it in order for a mud wrestle, between two ladies in Bond 24.
That sounds good.
Please.
Yeah.
And if you need any on-set reporters for that day to do a bit of press, we'll happily witness that one.
Sounds good.
So we've got the kind of the enigma that is Krylenko.
Yeah.
And he gets his comeuppance because he was behind that little gypsy camp raid, wasn't he?
Yeah, he did the bomb on
the Olympic mine. Yeah, that's right.
And there is a line which is quite subtle in that scene, which I think is amazing.
Oh yeah.
And so Bond comes back, the Olympic mine's destroyed everything, and so there's mess everywhere. And Kerim Bey says to Bond, the girl left in hysterics. And Bond says, found your technique too violent?
Yeah.
And I love it. I think it's such a cool line. Yeah. Anyway, so obviously he did the bomb and he did the gypsy fight. But then the next scene, so good. Yeah. So good.
Again, that's funny. I do love that line as well. And this whole film is just loaded with this undercurrent sex.
Yeah.
For 1963 is unreal. And considering, like we said before, Dr. No the previous year was the first time a couple had ever been filmed in bed together.
Yeah.
I mean, like, this is like really pushing things forward.
Yeah.
Massively. But
and it's done so throwaway. Like, the thing that works is that they don't make a big thing about it.
Yeah.
It's like they make it seem every day.
Yeah.
Which even nowadays it only just seems like that, but back then obviously it wasn't. But that's why it was so cool.
Yeah.
Is that in Bond that's what happens, and so good.
Yeah, no, I do love that line. That's classic. But I think this is one of those sort of forgotten but should be iconic Bond deaths, which is when they kill Krylenko.
Yeah,
and you've got the movie poster on the wall. The little trapdoor that opens by a mouth and all that kind of stuff. I mean, that's like visually, that's really, really cool, isn't it?
Yeah, brilliant. Well, I mean, they got that from the book as well, I think, because obviously Fleming wrote that with, I think it was Marilyn Monroe he had in the book.
That's right,
but
yeah.
The idea of the trapdoor in the mouth is just, it's original, isn't it? And it's something you haven't seen before. And I really like that scene in terms of, you see how close friends Bond and Kerim are in terms of how buddy-ish they are. Like, Connery knows that he could kill this guy like that, but he realizes that Kerim is so intent on getting the revenge. This guy's tried to kill him twice. He's the one that has to do it. And even though there's a slight risk that he might not be able to do it because of his shoulder, Bond sort of allows him to at least give it a go.
Yeah.
And that could have screwed up everything if he hadn't got him.
That's true.
So, and there's also one bit which is another bit which I absolutely love, which I don't know if I'd noticed before, but the bit when they first hear people approaching and they kind of back into the shadow a little bit, but they don't know who it is. If you watch it again and look at Connery's face, he's slowly attaching, I think it's a silencer or the end of the rifle bolt.
Yeah.
And the look again in his eyes is like one of pure ready to kill, like
really?
Pure menace. And you look at Connery when he does that, and he's just he's going in, I guess, the zone in terms of being ready to take someone out. And next time you watch, have a look, because I love it.
I'm going to check that out in a bit.
Yeah.
I remember that there's that scene we talked about in Dr. No where he goes up to Miss Tarrow's house, and he's got the towel wrapped around his fists, and like just the way he's looking at her, it's like, is he gonna kill her or what? I don't know. Yeah, he does that. He does that look well. But also, this scene is good advertising for Eon Productions, because the movie poster is for a film called Call Me Buana, which was an Eon film. So why wouldn't you do a bit of extra advertising? Yeah,
I think so.
Which was actually made by the majority of the crew on Doctor No, actually.
Yeah, I think
which
so.
is which is a pretty interesting moment. So I suppose, like, the main kind of hinge of the film is Bond meeting Tanya, and that whole kind of like process of seduction, I suppose, is how you would phrase it. Which I mean, one of my favourite Bond lines ever is when M and Moneypenny are listening in by the radio, like listening in on the tape of their conversation. And she's like, James, will you make love to me in England? And he's like, day and night, go on about the mechanism.
It's class. I like it.
I love that stuff.
And he does a similar thing when he goes back to his hotel room and he finds her there. And again, it's like quite suggestive. You see the sort of slight nakedness as she walks across through to the bed. And
I've got all flustered, right? Obviously, I'm watching all these on Blu-ray for the first time, and as a young boy, as imagine everybody listening to this who is male, as a young boy, they've at least once in their teenage life gone through the Bond movies and paused certain frames to see if you could see, a little bit of cheeky Bond boob or whatever.
Yeah.
But goodness me, I didn't quite realise how full-bodied the nudity was in that scene. You got the scene just through the sort of net curtains.
Yeah.
And she's completely stark naked, and you can see pretty much whatever you want to see in there, which I was just like, and again, I'm 31 years old, and there I am pausing a frame and checking out the naked lady, which I will admit to doing when I was probably about 12. But yeah, I mean, again, 1963, that's incredible.
It's great. Well, I mean, it's great for the scene.
Yeah.
Now, I don't think that was actually Daniela Bianchi. I think there might have been a stand-in.
Yeah, that is a shame. I remember hearing she wasn't up for that, so they used a double.
But still, I mean, it worked, so that was great. But I like the way that what you said about Bond sort of throwaway lines, sort of day and night sort of thing. And when they have their good little flirtism, and there comes to a point where as soon as they realise, they start kissing everything, straight away, without anything else, he starts asking about the Lecter. Yeah. So that's on, everything else is a byproduct. His sort of mind is on this one thing. And I just think it would be quite strange. Imagine if you were an agent and basically that you were being sent to sleep with someone, and that was your mission. And it could look at it as two ways. Well, one, that's your job. But if you turn up, she could look like Daniela Bianchi, and you could be like, quids in, you know. Alternatively, what if she looked like Rosa Klebb or, Lotte Lenya? I mean, it's, That
would be, it's almost, I almost want to see them explore that angle in one of the future Bonds. It's like when they put Bond in that little Citroen in For Your Eyes Only, isn't it? It's like the polar opposite to what you'd expect.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think because that whole scene where she sneaks into his bed and he comes through, and that's like the Bond audition scene, isn't it? That's the screen test scene where every actor who's up for the role does that scene, and that's like the romance kind of covered, which is pretty incredible. Which leads me on to another quote, which I think is somewhat suggestive, probably, I don't know, where she says, "I think my mouth is too big." And he says, "No, it's the right size for me, that is." Is he talking about his cock, do you think?
I think he might possibly be, yeah. I think he could be.
What a man.
What a man. I think it depends on how you interpret it, but I don't think there are too many other variations on the
He
theme.
could just be saying, "No, your mouth is a nice size."
Maybe he's got a big tongue.
Maybe maybe that is true. Yeah, there is that possibility.
Or
But
maybe
then-
he's just got a big mouth as well. So
yeah, that is true. But then, so you got that scene, and then it kind of the camera goes behind the mirror, and you've got the camera from there. And I mean, again, like this is 1963. This is pretty racy material for the time.
Yeah,
Which is pretty incredible.
a really good twisted part to the plot. That I mean, that whole causing a sort of news story about agents from separate countries sleeping together. That's like for that time, that was crazy, really.
Yeah.
But I like it because it is twisted, and it's not just Spectre wanting $1 million for blowing people up. There's a just a real twisted feeling about that, and I think that's great because they are twisted. Sort of,
Yeah.
They'll go to any lengths, basically.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's kind of that whole thing where the scary thing about them is they don't play by any set of rules, do they? It's like it's Spectre. They don't exist by any particular country. So it's like that's what they do is they try and like play people off against each other and all that kind of stuff. So that's a good little angle. But again, very very racy for 1963. And speaking of things that are a bit sort of intense for the time, is the train sequence. Like
best scene in the film, I think.
Yeah,
for me.
I mean that whole thing, like arriving at the station. I mean, is there more of a romantic location than the Orient Express? I don't think you could get one. Like, I mean, that's such an amazing kind of concept.
I think you've got Orient Express and you've got Gondola in Venice, and he does both from Russia, which is pretty good.
Yeah, but I love that bit where Bond's on the platform and you see Grant like just in the window, just sort of like shadowing him. Like, I mean, how creepy is that?
So good, and the music is like as he sort of slowly goes across. But it just shows what a good character he is in terms of how methodical he is. How he basically is analysing Bond, watching him. Every single moment that he watches Bond, whether he's at the gypsy camp, on the train or whatever, he's taking everything in. So he knows that when it comes time, he knows exactly how to act and react to Bond.
Yeah. I think there's several things that happened which raise a question in my mind in the next bit. It's obviously okay, it's he did that bit where they meet and you don't actually hear him do it, but they do the password sequence, can I borrow a match and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. And then when they go to dinner, they're sitting down and Bond notices him put the drug in the glass of wine. Yeah. And the weird thing is like Bond sat there eating and you see him catch it out the corner of his eye and he's blatantly noticed it, but he doesn't do anything about it. He lets her drink it anyway. Yeah. Which I'm like, man, that's pretty cold. Like, isn't it? Like, I guess, like, that is an interesting thing because he definitely does notice it, and I guess he's thinking that they can't have a fight in a dinner car in front of everyone. He can't. If he questions him now, the situation they would be in is in no better. He's behind the table, so he couldn't get to him. Something might happen which he couldn't have control of. Yeah. Where if he's thinking, okay, well, we're going to go back to the cabin. In the cabin, I'll have the advantage of knowing that I've seen that, and he doesn't know that I've seen that. So maybe he's thinking, well, once we get back to the cabin, I'll use that, so I'll have the surprise on my side, and that's precisely what he does. Which again leads me to my second point, in the sense they get back in the cabin, she starts to feel ill, obviously, and they take it back, and then he whips out his gun. And he's like, what did you put in a drink? Yeah. Blah, blah, blah. But the thing is this was a very weak moment for Bond because he's got him at gunpoint. And then Grant says, well, my escape route's for one. Like, what do you expect? And again, how easily willing Bond is to accept that. He's like, oh, yeah, fair enough. Like, it's just, I'm not going to take it with me kind of thing. And like, he's just going to discard her as soon as he's got the machine. So within a second, he puts his gun away and goes, "Oh, right, okay, so let's see this escape route." And he literally gets down and he's looking at the map, like he's not looking at Grant anymore. And he's gone from like on high alert at gunpoint to gun away. Oh yeah, whatever. Let's have a look at the map then. Yeah. And then that's obviously where he slips up, which I think for Bond was not his finest moment. No, that's a really good point. Actually, I think I guess maybe that shows his inexperience of being an earlier mission. I know it's not really. Narratively, we never know how far into it that mission is, but I guess from his point of view, if he does think it's a fellow agent, then that's fair enough. There's only escape route for one.
but you'd still want to keep your guard up slightly, wasn't he?
Yeah.
But then, So I mean, it was a weak moment in Bond. You know, he does have them in the films in various things and instances, and that's definitely one that's not quite there.
But yeah, I mean, it just goes to show what a cold bastard he is, because he lets him drug her.
Yeah.
And then B, when he's like, my escape route's for one, he's like, oh yeah, fair enough. I'm just going to essentially leave her on the train. Like that's it. She can, be left high and dry.
Yeah. And earlier on as well, he hits her, doesn't he? He hits her really hard when
he does, yeah.
After Grant. I mean, this guy has killed seven people, whatever, I think in the film, something like that. But you know, he kills Kerim Bey and Ben's the guy who's looking after, and then Bond sort of realizes, okay, this isn't good. He knows Tanya's involved, and now he's like, right, the anger is built up, and he's like, unless she tells him, that's it. And obviously she doesn't, because she's thinking she's doing it for Mother Russia, and then gives her a hard one.
That's another one of those things when he comes back into the room after he finds Kerim dead. And again, actually, there's another point which did make me laugh, which probably supports the fact that Bond just wants to leave her high and dry, is they're on their way out of the room to the restaurant car.
Yeah.
And the guy comes up and he's like, Mister, there's been a huge accident, blah, blah, blah. And they're sort of like, oh my God. So he goes to put Tanya back in the room.
Yeah.
And her reaction is to go, no tea? And
really?
He's like, yeah. And he's like, later. And just kind of pushes through. It's like, hold on a minute. There's been this huge accident and you're thinking about having a cup of tea, love.
Yeah. Yeah. I didn't notice that, actually.
Yeah.
But...
It did make me laugh.
Yeah.
But there's, with that bit when he comes in after Kerim's dead, like that look in his eye again, he's got that that thing, and he probably gives her a wallop, doesn't he?
Yeah, it is a bit harsh, but I guess back then it was part of the character. He thought she was a spy working against him, and nowadays obviously that wouldn't be done. Well, not in the film anyway. But yeah, so it's quite a hard hitting piece, that one. What did you think of actual Grant in terms of the character, that the fact that we don't actually hear him speak until he pretends to be Captain Nash on the train? I like that aspect.
Yeah,
of it.
I think it just makes him, like, silence is even more menacing than anything else, I suppose. So it does. Well, I mean, I suppose it's a shame that his voice is, hello, I'm Captain Nash. Hello, how are you doing? Yeah. But like, in terms of like what that does, I think that's great leading up to that point. You just like, the less you know about him, almost the scarier he is. Yeah,
and I like the fact that he is like that when Captain Nash, because he's so almost irritating, that the flip to when he suddenly is Grant is even stronger sort of thing, I think.
That's true. I think that kind of leading on to the actual fight sequence, like there's a little bit of weirdness in there where Grant's got him at gunpoint and he's like, how about a cigarette? Not a chance. And then he has that line, it's like, not unless you come over here and you kiss my foot.
Yeah,
like,
that is a bit of a strange one, isn't it?
All right, mate, what's going on there?
Yeah, maybe he's not asexual.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, I mean, that fight sequence is brutal. It really is brutal.
So
isn't it?
good. Yeah.
Like, the way, I mean, they must have picked up some serious bruising when they were shooting that.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't look like you were saying before. It doesn't look like they're pulling any punches at all. Like, they're ramming each other into the door frames and all that kind of stuff. And that kind of moment where, and again, that's cool actually, that you see the garrote wire at the beginning.
Yeah.
And that's how Bond actually ends up killing him.
Yeah.
Is a nice little payoff, I thought.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, that's a classic fight. That reminds me almost of how brutal the stairway fight is in Casino. It's that similar sort of brutality, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a brutality. It's a realism as well. It's not like a fantastical fight. It is actually happening. And I know I've sort of read somewhere or listened somewhere that stunt guys sort of rehearsed this thing for like 3 or 4 days or whatever. But then Connery and Robert Shaw were like, well, let us, just see what we can do. And they did it so well that basically out of that whole fight, which is I don't know how long it is, 4 or 5 minutes, there's only one shot in that whole fight that uses a stuntman. The rest of it is literally Sean Connery and Robert Shaw punching the crap out of each other, throwing each other, grabbing each other, slamming each other, and it's so good.
You wouldn't have got Roger doing that, would you?
Probably not. No, I can't imagine. No, probably not. Maybe no. No.
I feel like pretty much everybody else would have been up for it, but Rog probably not. Yeah,
Rog probably not. No, and there is one thing that I really like actually in the lead up to that fight when he's got the case open is how clever Bond is when he shows Red Grant the 20 gold sovereigns, whatever, and he says, "Oh, are there any in the other case?" And he's like, "Oh, there should be. I'll have a look." And the way that he's so eager to open the other case creates in Grant's mind, "Oh, right, I want to do it. I've got to be the one to do it."
Yeah.
And it's so clever of Bond, and that's what sets up the whole thing. I mean, he could have won either way, because if Grant hadn't have done that, there was a gun in that case, which Bond could have used. But the fact that Grant did sort of go, obviously the tear gas went off, and then Bond
I think that's like the attaché case, like I was saying before when we talked about Bond 24. I think like that's the way the gadgets of the future have to go. Is things like that, suitcases with the false bottom and things like that, because that's always going to be cool, isn't it? Rather than some silly little sci-fi phone gadget. Do you know what I mean? That's
like you said, everyone in the world has got phone gadgets or laptop gadgets or technical gadgets. It's let's get the hardware going again.
Exactly. I think there's always something universally cool about a secret door, for example, or like a book with a hidden compartment. Do you know what I mean? I think that's got to be the way to go with that. But yeah, I mean that fight sequence again for the time and even for now, like it's still a brutal fight, because it's the way movies are these days. Is like to get through the certificate process, it's like fighting is a huge aspect of that, which is why you barely see punches land and connect in films these days, because they sort of have to cut away at the last minute and use suggestion rather than actual the actual footage of it of a punch connecting, for example. So I mean it's great. And
I know I think it was in the fight in GoldenEye with 006 and Bond, they were trying to really capture that hard-hitting feel, and that fight is really good as well. But I think in terms of cinema fist fights, I don't know if it can be bettered. I mean,
I think it is probably the best.
Yeah, in terms of literally hand-to-hand fist fights, it's just leaves you thinking, it leaves the audience exhausted because you're watching it and you're almost there, And it does. It's almost drains your energy just watching that thing, and that's pretty awesome. It's pretty good.
Yeah.
And sorry, go on.
No, I was just going to say you can't knock that fight. That is like an all-time classic without a doubt.
And then following that, obviously, Tanya's still drugged, and they have to try and get off the train, and the train slows down for Grant's stop. And there's an interesting point just leading up to that. It's kind of like Bond myth. I don't know if it's true or not, but supposedly there's a cameo of Ian Fleming. And there's a part. In fact, it's the part. It's just before the fight. I think it's after Kerim has been killed and Bond's told his son that they're going to stop off to meet Kerim's son, and the train keeps going, and they pass this guy just standing next to the track with like navy shorts and navy trousers. Yeah. And I had a look, and I caught it last night, and I had a look, and you just see him turn. But I didn't really look like Fleming. I don't know, maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. It's hard to tell because he was a bit far away. But supposedly that is a cameo of Ian Fleming.
Yeah, that's right. I heard that he'd been visiting the set on that day and he was wearing that outfit. But nobody seems to know. Nobody said that's definitely him. No. Have they? So I don't know. So the jury's out on that one a little bit. But
interesting to see if you catch him though.
I'll revisit that. Maybe I can see it clear on the Blu-ray and I can. I can check him out, but that would be a lovely touch if it was.
It'd be really cool, wouldn't it?
Yeah, but so like the next bit, you've got the helicopter sequence, which is great, which they pilfered from Alfred Hitchcock, didn't they? With the plane in North by Northwest and all that kind of stuff,
which is a great film in itself. Actually, have you seen that?
I saw it years ago. I need to revisit that one. I remember actually. Did you watch the movie Hitchcock they brought out with Anthony?
Yes, I did.
Hopkins?
Yeah.
Do you remember that line where they offer him Casino Royale and he's like, "No, I made that movie years ago with North by Northwest."
Yes. Yeah. Interesting.
It'll be interesting. Probably we wouldn't have had the series of Bond. It would probably just been like a one-off Hitchcock. Dr. No would have just been it. But that would be interesting to kind of see. But yeah, that's a cool sequence. Again, like this is the first time you see like Bond versus like a villain who far outpowers him, and yet still coming out on top. Like you've got so many of those kind of things that happen later, but like it's one man with one rifle against a helicopter with grenades. Which is pretty crazy, but a great exciting sequence, I think. I think it's really underrated in terms of the stunt work that was done for that scene.
And what I found out from a documentary that I listened to, which I didn't know, was that Sean Connery pretty much did most of those stunts. Like, of the helicopter flying towards him and him moving out of the way, split second.
You're kidding me.
No. Like, I don't know if he did all of them, but it said that he did the majority of them. That would never happen nowadays. You'd never have Daniel Craig, a multi-million pound sort of insurance that you need to cover your lead actor in this, billion-dollar franchise or whatever, getting that close to an oncoming helicopter. That's like to knock
some
him.
proper close shaves there, aren't there? Like, big time.
I mean, for me, that isn't. I do love my stunts. I'm really into that sort of whole area. And for me, that is such a good stunt. It's like just dodging a helicopter. How brave and how close in terms of time you need. Yeah. And that for me, that's a stunt that it never is really brought up. People say about that scene, which is a good scene, but the stunt itself, wow.
I do wonder if that is something, which is why we don't see as many classic stunts in the Bond films these days, because maybe it's an insurance issue. Because I mean, like, you imagine running across the alligators in Live and Let Die. Would that even be allowed to happen in this day and age?
I think it's different if you have a stuntman doing it. If you have a stuntman doing it, that's what their job is. That's what they're insured to do. But having your lead actor do it, obviously they can do certain aspects, but that's what stuntmen are there for, aren't they? To do the jobs that lead actors can't or shouldn't. But back then, even having Connery anywhere near that helicopter is like insane, but so good. Such a good scene as well.
That is great. I just love that sort of that moment where like the guy's like ripping the things out with his teeth, and then it's like just the one drops in the helicopter. Just you imagine that amount of panic. Just like,
And interestingly as well, the music that's played during that scene is the same music that's played at the end of Dr. No, where
that's that string line.
Yeah, and we never hear that again, I don't think. I think it's only in those two films, which would be interesting. I mean, I wonder if like you could bring back variations of those sort of themes. I don't know if it'd work, or like you said with the 007 theme, maybe it's too dated and
I think with David Arnold's first one, Tomorrow Never Dies, I definitely heard some like very close. Like there's a scene. I think it's the sequence with the phone where he's what's the torture guy,
Dr. Kaufman.
Dr. Kaufman, that's it, and he tells him what buttons to press on his phone.
It. Yeah.
There's like a string line that sounds very close to that.
No, that's very true. Actually, I didn't think of that.
It's either that or the bit with the spider crawling up his body. And Dr. No, it's like I remember looking at it. I was like, oh man, that's like he's totally got it from there.
That's good.
Which is good. But I like that. I like little
nods.
references. Yeah, little nods. Yeah. So next up, this is a little tradition Blofeld likes to do, right? Yeah. He likes to, when Bond's obviously escaped and he's calls Klebb and Kronstein back to his office to tell him off on the boat, and he likes to pretend he's going to kill one person, and then at the last minute kill the other one, doesn't he? Yeah. He's got a habit of doing that.
Yeah, he's done it in Thunderball. You only live twice. Yeah.
He loves a bit of that.
Yeah.
So you see Morsney come in, and he's got a spiky shoe as well. So I wonder
whether
that's...
get these. Where do we get them?
Yeah.
Is it like, are they Clarks or what are they? Are they plush puppies?
I don't know, but I definitely want a pair. But so that must be like, standard bit of kit for Spectre agents is the spiky shoe. Yeah. So you get Gogol or Morsney come up behind him and give him the little quick kick in the shin, and that's that there and then. But there's but I think that's like setting up the Blofeld thing, isn't it?
Yeah, the Blofeld character. He loves a bit of that. Definitely. It's showing you that he's in control, and funnily enough as well, in that particular scene, I think you actually get to see the back of his head. So you see that he's not bald in that, he's got hair. Yeah. Which is kind of like a little bit of an interesting thing to later on. Yeah. But no, it's a good scene because obviously Rosa Klebb, that's the first time you ever see her sort of shitting herself. Yeah. This scary, maniacal woman who's caused so much sort of, I don't know, torture or whatever before, is suddenly like really, really, crapping it. Yeah. And then he gives her that one nice chance, and she's pretty thankful for it. Okay.
Yeah. But that's a cool, very tense scene. I think, like when you move on to the like the escape sequence when they reach the boat. Yeah. Like that sequence. I don't know whether you heard about this, but like this just reinforces how much of a dude Terrence Young is. Like basically he went up to scout with another member of the crew in a chopper, basically to kind of look out over that lake and kind of do a bit of scouting. Now, seconds after they take off, they lose power to the chopper and it crashes into that lake, right? So basically what happens is loads of the members of the crew dive in the river to like try and help him, right? Now what happens is, in their own words, the helicopter, it was, one of those, it was like the helicopter with like the bubble front.
Yeah.
The helicopter is 30, 40 feet down underneath the surface, and they're swimming down to him, and they can see the two guys, Terence Young and the other guy, in there, like trying to like break the glass so they could get out. So they get down to them, they manage to break the glass, they swim free, get up to the surface, and like basically he's all right. He's come back. Everybody's okay. Now, usually after an event like that, you've been in a helicopter crash, right? You've sunk to the bottom of a lake, right? You've smashed the glass and swum out to the surface, 40 feet worth of river you've swum through. You would be like, right, we're halting production for the rest of the week, probably. What does he do? He says, I'm all right. And they start shooting again 30 minutes later.
Unbelievable. So good. I mean,
does that support the fact that Terence Young was the real life model for James Bond or not? I mean, Jesus Christ almighty.
Everyone sort of says it, and that's got to be one of the biggest sort of reasons to back that up, I think.
Yeah. It's crazy. I mean, there were a lot of accidents and cock-ups that kind of plagued the whole production. But I mean, that's got to be a big one. I mean, imagine that happening, how terrifying that would be.
Losing your director. I mean, imagine being him, because I remember them saying as well that obviously there was a helicopter pilot as well who was in it, and they were saying that when it took off, they realised something was wrong, so the pilot purposefully turned the helicopter 90 degrees, so that the blades would like fly off as soon as they hit the water. Because if they come down normally, it might have hit someone or still being there for when they try to escape. But imagine being stuck in this bubble, like you said, 40 feet under, this dark sort of lake above them or whatever.
Yeah.
Frightening stuff.
Terrifying. Because I mean, I watched, I don't know if you've ever watched Mythbusters, but they did an episode where they stick him in a car and basically put him into a water tank to see how easy it would be to escape a car that's been, submerged in water. Yeah. And they were saying, like, you're so disorientated when you're down there that the chances of you actually surviving that happening are like basically nil, like unless you're extremely lucky. So to get out of a helicopter crash like that is incredible, really.
And not say anything about it, and like you said, 35
himself
minutes
down and back to work half an hour later. I mean, they just don't make men like that anymore, do they?
Not at all, no. Apart from you and me, but
well, there you go. Well, same. You were saying like you like stunts. Chris is the kind of guy that you'll find him doing parkour and leaping off buildings and God knows what. Whereas I'm more cut from the Roger Moore mold, where I'll happily stand and watch somebody do that, but you ain't getting me doing that. No way.
Or the Pierce Brosnan mold. You're
That's
sophisticated.
True. Yeah, I like to.
You'd have a martini in your hand.
yeah. But there we go. So this kind of brings us up to the end, really, where we've got the final bit with Kleb, which again is a sort of like a tradition where you think the movie's over and then a little henchman comes back, like it happens with Nick Nack, doesn't it? And there's several other times where there's like a little last minute fight.
It's a good plot device, that I like.
Yeah, and I think like obviously you got the fight with Kleb, and she gets the spiky shoe out, and he's like jamming a chair into her to get her away. And I suppose the most important thing to mention here is in the book she actually gets him, and that's like the end of the book is like him getting kicked and him feeling the poison, surging through him, and then him passing out at the end, which is great. There was like an open ending there, but obviously that didn't happen with the movie. But
imagine if it did.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, like that's
been pretty crazy.
Yeah, a little bit too brave, I think.
Probably
for the time, maybe.
Then,
But again, you've got the case of it was Tanya that shoots Kleb, and that's that happens quite a bit. You have that again in Thunderball.
Yeah.
You have it in reverse in Skyfall when Bond shows up to save M.
That's right.
You've got all that kind of stuff. But yeah, and then that's it really. And there's that sort of moment in there where Kleb comes in her maid's outfit, and Tanya sort of clocks her, and there's just that moment of like is a bit of a bone chiller for her. Where she's like, oh my god.
And it's interesting that she doesn't say anything straight away, because obviously Kleb tells her to be quiet. And at that point, Tanya could have said, Bond, James, watch out, sort of thing. And then obviously he clocks her when he's on the phone. And I think it's a good little fight. Some people might see it as, I don't know, a bit comedic, but I don't know. Like this woman is scary as hell, and when she's got a crazy foot flying around with this poison spike, you don't want to be anywhere near it, do you?
No, I think women can be very, very scary. I mean, it's a different kind of fear than Grant, for example, because he's just got brute force. But she's a nasty little piece of work, this woman, isn't she?
Yeah, definitely.
She's like, I would compare her to a wasp. Do you know, wasps are just nasty little creatures. She's like that, I think.
Intent on harm.
Yeah.
And then, great, the way in terms of Tanya, she's making a choice and obviously chooses the right one. It's a really good sort of way to tie that whole story up, I think.
Yeah. So do you think that's what she's doing when she's swaying the gun back and forth? Is she thinking, shall I shoot Bond or shall I shoot her?
Yeah, that's completely what I think she's doing, because she's thinking Mother Russia, her role is to look after she still doesn't know that Kleb's part of Spectre, does she?
No, that's true.
So she's thinking, right, I've got to save my boss almost, but then she's being crazy and I've loved James, I've got to save him, and I, in my mind, that's what she's kind of doing, I guess.
So there we have it then. We've got the end of the movie. You've got Bond checking out his little homemade porno on the street. Nice.
I wouldn't have thrown it away myself. I would have put it in my top pocket for later.
That's totally what I'd have done. And I think probably in this day and age, that is what Bond would have done. He'd be like, just save that for a little bit of viewing later on.
Yeah.
But I do love that comedy wave he does at the end after he throws it in the river. He's got that sort of weird
It's kind of like the water itself, isn't it? As it's going along.
But there you go, and then you've got the Matt Monroe theme, and there it is.
Yeah.
So that is From Russia with Love. So post viewing, do you feel any different about it than you did before you viewed it, or the same, or what?
I think, I listened to it with the commentary because I was trying to get a few different ideas and learn a bit of sort of new things around it. So it wasn't quite the same feeling as watching it. But obviously I've seen it reasonably recently, and when I watched it, it's hard to pick holes in it. I think for me, I mean, as a spy thriller, I think it's amazing. It will still chop and change for me, in terms of Goldfinger might go above it, Thunderball might go above it at times, but I think it's cemented itself as one of the top ones for me. Yeah,
I definitely feel like, and I felt the same with Casino Royale in the sense that it didn't feel like a formulaic Bond. It felt like a proper thriller where you did genuinely sort of you don't know what to expect, in the sense there could be some twists that you weren't perhaps expecting, and it's the same. It's got that proper kind of old school thriller. And again, I still feel like From Russia with Love almost is a film that belongs to the 50s rather than the 60s. It changes drastically for the next film, obviously, but it still has that. It feels like an older film than Goldfinger does, considering they're only a year apart. They do feel like they're from slightly different eras. But yeah, I love it. You've got, like you said before, it's like Bond's a detective. It's he's proper using his spy skills. He's not just kind of waltzing through everything. But I do love it. I've got a newfound appreciation for it, definitely.
And I think in Grant and Kleb, you got two of the series' best villains for me. I think they're both evil and in their own way, and both great. And
I think Kronstein as well is great. You don't see a lot of him, but I think that face, he's got a proper Fleming villain face, because Fleming just liked to make his villains ugly, basically, didn't he? Ugly or just a bit weird and perverted. And Kronstein's definitely got that sort of deviant look about him. You know what I mean?
Vladek Shabal, his name.
There he is. There he is.
Good guy.
But yeah. So there we have it. From Russia with Love reviewed.
Yeah, like it.
So we best do some Bond facts, hadn't we?
Ooh, I like the Bond facts. Let's see, what have you got?
Okay, so I'm going to reel off 5, and then you're going to give me some Bond facts as well.
Go for it. Okay.
So Bond fact number 1: From Russia with Love was the last movie that John F. Kennedy watched before he was assassinated. Which is important, isn't it? Because it was the fact that he gave the book a reference in Life magazine that kind of exploded Bond, especially over in the States. I don't know how much of an effect it had over here, but it put Bond on the map somewhat, having a high-ranking person like that give Fleming a shout out. From Russia with Love is Connery's favourite of the Bond movies he made, and understandably so. I think he's right on the money there. Also, Cubby Broccoli and Terence Young share that sentiment as well. That was their favourite Bond movie out of them all, which is a pretty big thing. One thing that's interesting that you would never know unless you were like a proper geek. A proper geek. What am I talking about? I'm on a Bond podcast where I'm talking about Bond for an hour and a half. The moves in the chess game played by Kronstein at the beginning are from the real life game played by Boris Spassky and David Bronstein at the USSR Championship in Leningrad in 1960. So that's quite an interesting little tidbit. In From Russia with Love, Bond doesn't say the name is Bond James Bond.
That's an interesting one because you think after it worked so well in Dr. No, you would have thought he would.
Because it wouldn't be the tradition yet. Like it wouldn't have got to that point yet. No. So it's interesting that they left it out.
Yeah, because he obviously does it in Goldfinger, doesn't he? I'm sure.
Yeah, he does when on the balcony at Miami, doesn't it? Yeah,
that's of course. Yeah. Oh, good ones.
And the last one for me is Tanya Mallet, who played Tilly Masterson in Goldfinger, was originally in the running to play Tanya.
Yeah, very interesting. Yeah, I think they came up with the right choice though for that one.
Definitely.
Personally, I think so. Definitely. Cool. Okay, well, I've got a few facts as well. When Bond writes "From Russia with Love," or should I say "With Love from Russia," on the photo that he hands to Moneypenny, the hands are actually belong to director Terence Young.
Nice.
Who wrote that. I know they had a lot of crowd trouble in Istanbul, especially around the train station sort of scenes. And they basically Terence Young told Peter Perkins, who was a stunt coordinator, that they needed some sort of distraction to get the people away. Yeah. So he and one of the other stunt guys basically went to a balcony across the road and hang themselves off this balcony, pretending to be in distress, and shouted help. And then the crowd all left the train station to go and see what's going on. And Terence Young got shot. So that's really
crazy.
Good.
You can kind of see that actually when they're making the escape with the Lecter. There's an exterior scene when they come up through the marketplace in the trapdoor in the floor, and they run off into the distance. There's just like a crowd of people just stood there watching. Yeah. Like it's quite like sort of obvious when you sort of know what to look for, but it's shot in such a way that you don't immediately notice it.
I think the reason with that is because if there is a big fire, people do just stand around to watch. So that never crossed my mind, because in this day and age, if there's a load of fire engines going past, people would just go, well, what's that for? So I think that's okay, really.
It worked in their favour.
Exactly. And there was another little fact, is the train station. It was the same station that was used for each station in the film. So I think they had like 3 different stations, like Zagreb and all this other place. Yeah. And it was the same one, just filmed from different angles. And that is a train station which I happen to go to as well. And I'll put photos of that.
That was another one that made me scream, because what they did, didn't they? They just used the different platforms of the same station to work for that. But I remember there's that sort of the main view from the station in Istanbul where you see that big clock. Yeah, I mean that clock is still there, isn't it? It's the same clock.
The clock is still there. Yeah.
And you had a shot from that angle.
Yeah.
There's suddenly that bit where Tanya notices, I forget the guy's name now, but she gets to the station, she's like, oh my god, like I recognise that guy.
Ben's,
Ben's, that's it, of course. That little sort of cafe bit isn't there anymore, is it? As far as I understand.
No, there is sort of a restaurant, but that is moved around a bit, so the sort of wooden sort of seating area they had, I think, is gone. So it's not quite the same, but there's enough there to. The clock is good, and the windows behind them are recognisable. You'll see. You'll check out the photos.
Yeah, cool.
Okay, so for the film, Bond had 8 suits, 2 top coats, and an evening suit, all made bespoke by Anthony Sinclair, at a cost of around $2,000, which in today's money would be about $20,000. So it's not sparing any pennies there. His shirts were also $30 from Turnbull and Asser, and they'd be about $200 a piece as well. Very nice. So not bad at all.
I got an Anthony Sinclair tie for Christmas like a couple of years ago.
And how jealous was I?
Yeah, it was. So it's basically like the replica Bond tie from Dr. No, like the knitted kind of look.
Oh. It looks so good,
which is great. I've only worn it like twice. I'm not the type to get dressed up all that often. But
what have you worn it to? Have you worn it around the house or?
Well, on the first day, that was. I just put my suit on, stand in front of the mirror for a good 4 or 5 hours, just doing my different poses and stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a good one.
You know what I'm thinking?
Go on.
Next podcast, We got to see the tie.
I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it.
Yeah,
I'm in
gotta do
costume
it.
next time.
Lovely. Okay, so another fact is when they went to Scotland, they were en route to location, and the driver actually fell asleep. And in the back was Daniela Bianchi, and the car veered off into a gorge. And he fell asleep. It was really early in the morning or something.
I heard that was like 5 a.m., wasn't it? 5 o'clock in the morning on the way. Yeah.
Obviously, they didn't have Red Bull back then, so he just sort of went having.
Yeah.
And her face was so swollen that they couldn't film for 2 weeks. So that's pretty bad.
I heard with Connery was in the car behind, and he was one of the people that actually helped pull her out of the wreckage. So
yeah.
Brave
man as well. It's good. And finally, the three sort of main females in it, Daniela Bianchi, Martine Beswick, and Elisa Gurr, were all former beauty pageant winners. So there we go.
And rightly so. Very, very good looking ladies.
Yeah, exactly.
So I think it's time we reveal our trivia answers, don't we?
Oh, this is a good one.
There we go.
Oh no, I haven't thought about mine. Hang on a minute.
All right. You have a little sip of your water. I'll do a little dance.
Okay.
For our listeners, not that they. So okay, I'll repose my question to you, and then
go
you
for
can
it.
see. So my question of the day is: when Bond is offered a coffee in Kerim Bey's office, how does he take it?
Okay, I'm going to go with the answer, which I think is for Bond and Kerim.
Okay.
2, medium sweet.
Absolutely right. Well done.
That was so lucky because I was pretty close. Because I was thinking, because he orders a coffee in his room, you know, when he goes to the hotel.
Yeah.
And he I think he orders like coffee very black for his breakfast.
Yeah.
And I was getting a bit like,
that's right. I was trying to catch you out because for the benefit of our listeners, Chris knows everything. His knowledge of Bond is very, very. He just knows everything. And I was trying to catch him out with that one, and you still got it. So well done.
No, well, thanks, but I don't know everything. But right, I've got a good one for you, and this is one where I think you're going to do extremely well at. So I said earlier, we're going to talk about Bond aliases. So I'll say a number of Bond aliases, and you've got to tell me what particular film they are from.
Okay.
Okay, so we're going to start with James Stock.
View to a Kill.
Yes. Mr. Fisher.
You Only Live Twice.
Yes. Robert Sterling.
I know. Okay. I think I know what your bonus question is. Is this related to your bonus question?
No, it's not.
Okay. It's actually 2. It's actually The Spy Who Loved Me. And if you look on his driver's license in Quantum of Solace, it also says Robert Sterling on there as well.
See? Yeah. Excellent. I didn't even know that. So you're going to get a bonus point as well as possibly the bonus point.
Well, it's not mentioned, but it just flashes up on screen briefly. And
you're good with these aliases.
Thanks, man.
David Somerset.
From Russia with Love.
Yeah. James St. John Smythe.
View to a Kill again.
Yeah, he likes his aliases in the View to a Kill, doesn't he? Dr. Mikhail Arkoff.
That was The World Is Not Enough.
Yeah, superb. Arlington Beach.
Casino Royale.
Yeah. God, you're good at this. Klaus Hergesheimer.
You irritating man. Diamonds Are Forever.
And what section was he from?
G section.
Yeah. And Mr. Van Beek.
Fucking Die Another Day.
Yeah. Okay. Now the bonus one is quite an easy one. In which other Bond alias did Bond use as a diamond smuggler?
Peter Franks.
Yeah. My God, that is a round of applause.
Thanks, man. Full marks for Tommy.
Yeah, it'd be great. Good to see how the audience did as well on that one.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So that's our trivia done, which I think brings us on to our guess the quote round.
Okay.
So I suppose I should re-perform last week's.
I think you definitely should read.
Okay, so this character doesn't actually have a name, as far as I'm aware. So in terms of an answer, I'm looking for just like a description of who that person is, please. Yeah, hold on, you're dead.
That's amazing. I could be like watching the film right now.
Yeah, that's good.
Superb. Right, I don't know his name, but is it the SAS guy in the start of like Living Daylights?
Absolutely right.
Yeah, I think I'm not 100% sure, but it might be one of the stunt guys. I don't know. Maybe it is. Maybe it isn't. It looked a bit like was it Simon Crane or something? But I don't know. But anyway, yeah,
it's basically the bit where Bond is about to jump on the roof of the Jeep, and he just elbows him out of the way, gives him a grunt, he shoots him in the belly, and that's that. Yeah,
great one. I like it. Okay, right. So, time for my quote this week. It probably won't be quite as authentic as my last one, but we'll see how we get on. Okay, so I'll get into character. Okay. This is where we leave you, Mr. Bond. That wasn't done very well. I will do it again.
All right, go on.
It's a bit hard. Right, let me just think. Okay. This is where we leave you, Mr. Bond.
I've got that's one of those where I've got that's going to bug me for a little while, that, because I know it but I don't know it.
You'll get it. I get it. I'll try and do it one more time. Right, let me just see if I can get a bit better with the accent. Okay,
here we go.
This is where we leave you, Mr. Bond.
All right,
something like that.
There's several possibilities in my mind. I'm gonna rack my brains, because I think it's gonna be one of those that pops into my head at a later point.
We'll have it before the next podcast.
Yeah. But good stuff.
Cool.
All right, so that's pretty much all for today. I think what we'll do is we'll just say make sure you come join us on Facebook, facebook.com/James Bond Radio, Twitter, and all the usual business. And if you've got any questions or anything you want to say, leave us a voicemail on jamesbondradio.com. So what are we talking about next time?
Next time, we're going to look at the current Fleming TV episodes. Now, this is something that I think has been on Sky, and there's a 4-part series to it. It's something I know you've seen one or two already. I haven't seen them, so I'm going to make sure you watch them before the next time. And it's basically a review of that, what we think, and hopefully throw in a few snippets about Fleming and everything around that, and see how we go from there.
Sounds good. There's I think in the States it's on BBC America, but over here in England it's on Sky. But so we're going to bone up on the 4 episodes and have a chat about that next time. Exciting.
Yeah, that'd be good.
All right then, guys. So that's all for today. I've been Tom Sears.
I've been Chris Wright.
And James Bond Radio will return with Fleming Reviewed. We'll see you next time. Goodbye.
Thanks for listening.